Who do you do business with? Usually it's people that you like or resonate or relate with on some level. Being you and keeping it real are part of your marketing, and they're actually becoming one of the most important things you can do as part of your marketing efforts. Today, I'm talking to the human manager himself, Mark Lebusque, about why being relatable, building real connection, and sharing your story, basically being human, is such a massively important part of your marketing. Mark has some great tips to share that I know you're going to get some great value from. So keep listening.
Welcome to Sales Without Socials. If you too are mentally exhausted from the constantly changing algorithms, you're not getting a return on the blood, sweat, and tears you put into your social media efforts, and know there must be a better way to market your business, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Tanya Williams. I love pink, wearing 4-inch heels, and being the sparkly chief of everything at Digital Conversations. In the last 6 months, I have transformed my business growth by doubling down on the marketing strategies that actually work, and that doesn't include Facebook ads, Reels, or silly TikToks. So if you're like me and you're sick of being on the social media hamster wheel and want to focus your time on marketing strategies that don't suck your time without a result, then make sure you subscribe and keep listening. Are you with me? Let's dive in. And you know what? Let's have a little bit of fun along the way. Hello and welcome to the Sales Without Socials podcast. I'm your host, Tanya Williams, Chief of Everything at Digital Conversations, a Brisbane-based marketing consultant and trainer helping B2B service-based business owners with simple marketing tactics to generate new business and increase the eyeballs on your brand. Before I deep dive into today's episode, I'd invite you to download Social Free Sales, which covers 7 ways to supercharge your sales without a single social media post. Now, these are just a few thought starters, and I'm going to cover more of these on future podcast episodes. Plus, I'm also going to cover a load more marketing tactics that don't include Facebook ads, Reels, or silly TikToks. Go to saleswithoutsocials.com.au and grab your copy now.
Hey, everybody, it is Tanya Williams here, Chief of Everything at Digital Conversations, and of course, the founder of Sales Without Socials, the podcast, where we talk about all sorts of stuff that doesn't focus on social media and Facebook ads and TikTok and all that silly stuff that's happening at the moment. Oh, fun but silly. And today I am talking to Mark Lebusque. Now, Mark is the human manager. Mark and I connected a few years ago about talking about keeping it real and keeping it human and stuff. I'm a big fan of what he does. We connected on LinkedIn. I love the content that he shares. He just keeps it real, and this is the person to talk to about this topic. So I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen. Mark, welcome and thank you.
Tanya, thanks for having me on board, and I think the work you're doing is incredible. So thank you.
Thank you. Oh, mutual love. I love it, love it, love it. Can you tell people a bit about your background, just to give them a bit of context?
Okay, so started my life as a primary school teacher. I grew up in the country, up on the Murray River, at a place called Mildura, about 6 hours out of Melbourne, and I I taught for a couple of years. I was a school teacher. I loved that whole space of teaching and helping particularly young minds to be shaped up and developed. But I only lasted a couple of years because I found it quite difficult in the staff room full of toxic people. So I actually ended up leaving that career pretty quickly and took a job in logistics, loading planes and driving trucks. And as you do, you just follow the path from there. So I was only in my early 20s, and then I was from loading planes and driving trucks. I was in the call center. I was then in sales. I was then in little branch management roles around Australia, then into some bigger roles. And you just blindly follow your career to where you got to, and ultimately into some pretty senior sales director, operational director type roles. And eventually, Tanya, ended up in HR because I'd run an experiment to see what would happen if I treated my people like human beings when I was in the sales space. And funny question to ask yourself, because I wasn't always that way. We got such good results in both our business results, but in our engagement and things that the business asked me, Australia Post asked me to go up into the HR team and sort of do what I was doing with my people. And ultimately it's led me to to branching out about 9 years ago, and now running my own business, which is called My Name, which is a bit self-indulgent, but it's all really about um, bringing connection and belonging and those sorts of things into the day-to-day technical work that we do.
Yeah. And look, I think, at the end of the day, regardless of what business we do, it's all about people. We're doing business with other people. And I think people often forget that they get so caught up in brand and all this sort of stuff, which is all great and it's important. But at the end of the day, we're buying people and we're doing business with people and we need to relate to them on that level. And we're going to dive deep into that because it's such a big topic. But what do you think being human actually means from a a business context?
That's a really interesting question because uh, I think being human, I don't, from a business context, I sort of when that question came up, I went, I really like the question, but now I'm thinking to myself, it's like being human is just being human. So, and then there's a thing called business that we go into. One of the things we need to be conscious of is to not lose our humanity when we go into a business context. So, let me talk about what it is to be human. Perfectly imperfect, I think, is the place we start, and that's a big one for business context, and I think particularly from a marketing perspective, but from all sorts of um, areas in business, is sometimes we are chasing perfection before we actually do something. And I always ask people this, Tanya, and I'm sure you'll like this question: is how's perfectionism going for you?
Yeah, I need to start asking that question with a few of my clients.
So I think that's the starting point. I think it's also to be able to feel like there's like this is going to sound a bit deep, maybe a little bit mushy, but there's also the thing about being connected, but also feeling a bit isolated, being loved, but also being sometimes rejected. It's all the emotional stuff that comes in, and I think if I overlay that to a business context now, it's that we actually need to feel these things in a business sense, because if we don't, and I still think that technical and process and strategy, all these things are important, but if we could just combine what it is to be human with the technical side of things, I think our businesses would run a lot more successfully and sustainably than what they do today.
Absolutely. And I think there's so much focus on numbers and there's not enough focus around the human and the emotional element and how that plays into those sorts of facts and figures and all that sort of stuff as well. But I mean, I have this conversation so often with clients who I'm helping to, whether it's creating copy or whatever it might be, and often they struggle when it comes to the personal aspect. When I say, you don't have your story on your website. Where's your story? And they go, I don't know. No one would think that's interesting, or I don't know what to say. And people really struggle with it. And you go, this is your story. Like, you should know this inside out. You should know like what lights you up and, how you help people and all those sorts of things. And people really struggle with it and they don't understand why they should be sharing their story either. And I've always been a big believer in you've got to be yourself in business, and you can, put all the facade in the world out there, but you still have to be you. Like you have to come across as unique, as authentic. Why do you think that human element is so important from a marketing perspective for business owners?
Um, like Because you're dealing with human beings and people want to be able to relate. Look, they want to relate to your product or your service or whatever that might be. But I'll tell you what they'll really relate to is the human story behind that. Because basically, human beings are storytellers. And so we need to we need to be able to connect. You need to be able to connect to your audience. You need them to be able to go, hey, they're just like me. That story is incredible. Now I feel some sort of connection to them. We're a social creature. We want to feel in whatever purchasing decision we're making, whether it's connected to the brand that you're buying. Some people are very much about the brand, but I think it's more connected to the experience that it will bring. And then I think the really big one is I can actually connect to a story that someone has shared that then makes me go, I want to be part of that. I want to be connected. And then I want to feel this, which is a big part for human beings, is I actually want to feel a sense of belonging to that brand.
Yeah. Why do you think connection and belonging are so important? It's because what that's part of our DNA as people.
Yeah, we're hardwired to it. So, there's connection and belonging happens on a whole lot of levels. And I think if you think about it purely from a human being level, we're social creatures that crave connection, to other human beings. That's just the way we are.
Yeah.
That's how we're hardwired.
Yeah.
Now, when we find that connection, and if we think about the workplace there for a moment, I look at it and I go now to belonging. Like the two words that come to mind for me, and these I think are important words for marketers to think about, is why am I relevant and how do I contribute? And I think this is the essence of belonging for human beings. They go, if you can let me know why I'm relevant and how I contribute to something, well, then I'm in. So I think there needs to be more conversations. I really think we scratched the surface on this stuff. And I love what you said before with your own clients is, get focused in on this, but they don't. They then go, we need to get into the sort of shiny stuff. But
Yeah.
like just connecting in and feeling a sense of belonging creates, I guess, an appetite for people to purchase, but also to advocate. And I think advocacy is a huge opportunity.
Absolutely. And I think coming back to that, connection piece and being having that ability to share, I think for most of us, and I would put my hand up to it as well, is there's often a little bit of fear around it because what are people going to think about me? And it's like, oh my God, does that mean I have to be a bit vulnerable? And I know I'm not good at being vulnerable, but I think a lot of people are like that. It's like, oh yeah, but I don't want to go too deep, or I don't want to share too much because that opens me up for criticism. And that means I'm vulnerable. And oh my God, what can that actually mean? Right. I think there's that fear is a big part of not wanting to share too much, I think, too, right?
Absolutely. So one of the things we humans get a bit caught up in too is we try and jump in the deep end of the vulnerability pool.
Mm.
And so my suggestion on this one is if we use the pool as a metaphor here, it's like getting into a swimming pool. So step down the steps to start with. Maybe even just test the temperature with your big toe to start with, and then just walk down the steps. And, every time you walk down a step, you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but you acclimatize. And
Yeah.
then you walk down to the next step. You ultimately get to your waist. I share this story a lot, Tanya, and I go, we all do that little penguin thing when we get to our waist if the water's cold.
It's cold.
Yeah, it's cold. Oh, but the thing about it is, I guess my point is this: is if there's a bit of fear in you for jumping into your vulnerability and sharing a story, approach it that way. Comfortable, a bit uncomfortable, feeling okay again, but continue to walk down the step because I think this is the essence of, again, connecting with your client is that they want to know that you're a human being. They want to know that you're prepared to put some things out. I've heard some great stories where organizations that have done this well actually get their customers to share a story. I've heard some of the banks where they get people to share a story about how getting that loan changed their life or
Yeah.
whatever it might have been. So I think, and they're vulnerable stories as well. So, and the other thing I want to say quickly on this one is vulnerability is not a competition. So your story doesn't have to be better than my story.
Yeah.
My story doesn't have to be better than your stories. It's your story. And all you're trying to do is get people to actually relate to it and go, you know what? They're just like me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's such an important thing as a business owner. And I see, as I mentioned, I see this on websites all the time where there's just this very corporate, boring about us page that tells me nothing about the team, the people, where they come from, their why, what lights them up. They're missing the whole point of what about us is supposed to be about. But I think, as you mentioned, the key is in creating those connections and resonating, and making sure that we are sharing those stories because, as I said, like without the story, how do we know who you are and do I want to actually buy from you? And from a marketing perspective, it takes multiple touch points these days, right? So it takes seeing someone on LinkedIn and seeing their posts over a certain period of time going, oh, this really resonates with me. I like this person. I need to reach out to them to get them to speak at my event or to help me or whatever it might be. And I hear it so often and I see it so often with clients as well, who I think that we get caught up in this quick win world, right? I have to do marketing that generates a result like right now. And I think the story element, the human element, doesn't necessarily generate a response straight away. Therefore, people think, oh, it's not that important. No one really wants to know about that or read that. What's your experience with that? Like, do you find that people really struggle with that? Oh, I've got to share my story and I don't know what to say. And is that going to actually help me in business?
Yeah, there's two parts to that. So let's pick up the first part about the quick wins and the what's next, and it's got to happen now. And so,
Yep.
the business world and organizational psyche is we've got to keep moving fast, and it's got to be quick, and it's got to be rapid, and we've got to get results right now. And look, I'm not saying we go to the other end where we just sit there, twiddle our thumbs, and we just hope the message hits. But somewhere in between that
Yeah.
is the adaptive change. What we're really trying to do here is we're trying to help people change at times their beliefs, behaviors, and values. And I think the way we go about it is all us about, where we go, let's try and show them something really shiny, and we'll just, some people will just flick on it. I'm a bit like that. I can be an impulse buyer, and I'm like, geez, I really like that. And before I know it, I've bought it.
Especially
But
when it
my really important purchases are
yeah,
really driven by, I've got to adapt in some way. I've got to see a consistent message. Like this idea
yeah,
of, we talked before about brand and LinkedIn. I continue to say to people, you've got to, if it's a product or if it's you, because you're a product and a brand as well, is
yeah,
you've actually got to have consistency. And some people will say to me, oh, geez, you're always on LinkedIn once or twice a day. And I go, that's right.
yeah,
But over time, that creates an appetite for people to go, hey, we sort of like what you do, Mark. You're a bit different. You you seem to say what you think needs to be said. We need a bit of that in our business. We've read some of your stories. Some of your stuff's quite personal. Um,
yeah.
we need some of that. So I think that we need to just embrace that where people are looking for the human being, and I think the pandemic has had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the thing that I like about the content that you're putting out as well is it goes beyond business as well. Like this, you're sharing stories about you renovating your house and the dogs, and having a hard week and lying on the lounge with the dogs and like all that sort of stuff. I resonate with all of that because I'm surrounded by 5 dogs at the moment, so I totally get all that sort of stuff. And I think going just beyond business and sharing about who you are as a person is a big part of being human and sharing your story in business as well, right?
It is indeed. And look, if I went back 9 years ago when I was working back in the corporate world, there would have been a reluctance to do some of that. So I think I
Mm,
totally get at times that it can be challenging because, like, there's a freedom in the choices you make about what you share. And I think there's also a risk in that too. So I think that's not just for individuals, but for businesses as well, is how much do you share? And there is such a thing, and you know this, and we all know it, is you can overshare and then people will be freaked out. So,
TMI. Yeah,
so the idea that, my brand is about being human. I want people to see the human side of me. And that could be sitting in my sauna in the morning. I could be laying on the couch asleep with the dogs. The couch has some sort of magical power that puts me asleep whenever I get on it. And if you combine the 4 dash hounds, it's even better. I'll also put things up there that I've stuffed up. Like I lost my luggage because um, my electric toothbrush was in my bag and it was vibrating. They came onto the plane 2 weeks ago and they said, we can't put your bag on underneath, sir, because it's vibrating. Now, everyone on the plane just stopped and looked at me.
Oh my god.
And I shared that, and like, you know why I shared that? Because it's a little bit embarrassing, and then people can assume what might have been in the bag, and they did. But at the same time, I
Like, it's
want
a
people to
toothbrush, it's a toothbrush.
I just want people to see me as the human that, you know what, I'm not eating the beautiful meal every day. I'm not everything's not going well. I'm perfectly imperfect, and I
Yeah,
just would say to businesses, like, don't be afraid to show yourself, because when you do, as I did, I made that choice about 7 or 8 years ago. It started to have a really positive impact on who I was attracting to what I do.
yeah, and I think that's a big part of it, right? So from a marketing perspective, um, we need to. I mean, I've just been through this transformation myself. I've just redone my whole website. I've decided to have a whole bunch of fun with it, and it's all sort of 80s themed. And it's just like, you know what? I'm so sick of just doing the same stuff as everyone else. I want to do stuff differently, and I get that that's not going to resonate with everybody, but that's okay because the people who do like it and it's going to resonate with them, they're the sorts of people I want to work with anyway. So I think we get so turned off as business owners going, oh my God, but what happens if one person doesn't like it or this, this, and you said, it doesn't matter. You're going to attract the right type of people with the stories that you're sharing, the things that you're doing on all your channels, right?
I think you've got to be courageous. This is a great point. I had a conversation. I did some conference work in the last few months, and I was having a conversation before the conference, and I just, in the end, I said, look, do you want me to create an experience that is great for 200 people, or do you want me to create an experience that just keeps one or two people happy that are never happy? So, and they went, oh, we want the first one. I said, well, you've got to get your mindset around that. So here's the thing: you said it before. You can't please everybody, and some people think that what I do is just kumbaya stuff, and we all sit around the fire and hug, and you know what? That's okay. I'm okay with that. Some people think it's liberating and life changing, and there's a whole lot of people in between. We've just got to get past the fear of someone's not going to like me, because you know what? That's true. Someone might be listening, actually wouldn't be listening to this today when they saw my name, because they go, I don't like him. That's okay with me. And that's why I love what you're doing with your website, because you go, if we're trying to sell something and market something, we need to stand out. So why would we want to look like everybody else?
Yeah. And you've got to have your own unique take on things and your own unique message. And that's why I say to people about, I'm not going to be that marketer that goes, oh my God, you have to be on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and be dancing around and doing all this stuff. Well, if that's what works for you, then go ahead, do it. I'm not saying don't, but I'm saying you don't have to do those things, especially if you're not comfortable with them. I'm comfortable with saying, well, I'm not that marketer that's going to be obsessed with social media and telling you have to do all that. I'm going to say, hey, it's one part of the puzzle and we can do some of that. But hey, look at all these other great things that we can do as well. And I'm not afraid about being vocal around that.
I
And
think
if someone wants to criticize that, then hey, that's on them. I don't give I could not give to, I
Yep.
won't say the F word, but I really couldn't, because I'm being authentic to me and what lights me up and what I feel sits well with my values and where I'm at, from a
I
business.
think the values piece is really important here. I'm just launching an online product, and I've been building it for 16 months, called the Human Manager Academy. So basically taking my work, leading self and leading team, onto an online platform. And look, I was working with a PR firm, and they did amazing work for me for a couple of years. And they said, oh, look, one thing you might want to consider is get some influencers to endorse it on Instagram, and it'll cost you about this much. And straight away it was, and you know what, that does work for people. But my values went, no, I don't need to
Yeah,
do that. And it's sort of like, so I think there's the other part of it too, is just be a little bit conscious that if it's not aligning to your value set, um,
yeah.
it's going to be a real problem for you at some stage when you're compromising your values as well.
Absolutely. And as you said, that yeah, that could have really worked well. But if it doesn't feel right for you, or you just think, you know what, I'd rather do it a different way, then that's okay as well. And I think we need to just be open to, doing things differently, and not being so obsessed with what everyone else thinks in this world. And I think maybe that comes with age as well, Mark. I just think maybe I'm at that point where I'm just like, I couldn't give a crap what anyone thinks anymore. I'm just going to be me and
Yeah.
do me.
I was in Perth last week,
Years
and
ago, I would have done that.
yeah, I was in Perth last week, and one of my good friends over there had dinner with her and her husband, and I've just actually just letting people might not see this. I just letting my hair grow. And I'm going to grow a man bun. I've just
Yeah,
decided I'm 56, and maybe it's a late life crisis, but she goes, you're not really fussed, are you now? You don't care. And I go, look, within 18 months, I'll be working in bare feet.
love
Because
it.
that's what I want. And if
Yeah,
like some people are going to like that, and other people aren't going to like it, but that's more about them than it is about me. I'm just going to be who I am, and you're either in or you're not in. And you spend a lot of time in your life, early days. I'm going to say, I think your point about age has got a bit to do with it. We spend a lot of time trying to
impressive.
impress other people,
Yeah,
particularly who we report to, by being a certain way. Whereas as we get a bit older and we have a few life events, we go, perspective's an interesting thing now. Like, what if my hair is long and someone goes, you don't look like a leadership consultant? I go, well, what am I supposed to look like? Is it like
yeah,
a sports jacket and a white pressed shirt and a pair of chinos?
yeah.
Because I'm
That's
not the right guy for you.
and that's exactly what I love about all the stuff that you do, because you're just unapologetic about it and go, well, I'm imperfect. This is me. Take me as you see me, or or bugger off, basically.
I don't say that to them. I think they make the decision themselves on that. They usually say, oh, we've decided to go in another direction. And I go, that's okay.
Yep, that's fine. Exactly. So, how can we connect more in our marketing stories? Like, what sort of things, especially with people who are really struggling to go, I don't know what to share or how to start.
Yep.
What sorts of things can we start with? So, if we've got some business owners that are going, well, I haven't got a story on my website, but I need to put one on there.
Yep.
Is there certain things that there's certain questions they should be asking? And I know you mentioned a couple before, but what's a starting point from to build that connection?
Yeah, look, I think the starting point is you've got to really know what you're about, and what are you trying to project out into the marketplace. So for me, I'll share a real live one. So for me, what I worked out about my work early days, because I didn't have a lot of work, so I could sit down and think about it, was bound around the concepts of connection and belonging.
Yep.
So then I go, well, so why? And my first surface level story was it's just right. It just feels like it's the right thing to do. So I'm going to say this: is you got to get below your surface level story, because that's your safe story,
Yep.
and then you got to walk into that pool. And for my story is based around tragedy, and it's the loss of my dad, and in the particular circumstances when he took his own life, and it's like he didn't feel like he belonged anymore, and he lost that connection. So something that happened 20 odd years ago in my life, and just sat there. I hadn't thought about it much, but when I talk to people today, I tell them that my story is based around a tragic event, um, and this is why I think it's important that not just in the workplace, but in the world, is that we when we're in a position of privilege to be leading others, we need to be thinking about how do we make them feel like they belong? How can we enable them to feel like they belong and feel connected, so they can do good work and operate as a human? Now,
Mhm.
the interesting thing is, I know I've got my website and bits and pieces on there, but I don't have any. As I say to people, I don't have any fancy brochures. I tell people that story, and it's like, now we get you.
Yeah.
Now,
Well, they're gonna remember it as well, right? They're gonna be
well,
like,
they
"Oh,
do, and they also say, "How the hell can you tell the story?" And I go, "Because it's a big part of who I am today and why I do what I do." And if you don't understand that, I could say things like this to you: "You need to get me in because I can drive your engagement score up, and your return on investment is going to be this." In
yeah,
fact, when people ask me what's our return on investment working for you, I say I don't know.
yeah,
But what I can tell you is, if you engage and you connect and you create that belonging, that sustainable success will come to your business, and it's going to take a bit of time.
yeah,
So tell your story, be comfortable. That to me is, I'm in the deep end when I'm telling that story, but it took me a few years to step out into the pool and then swim down to the deep end, rather than jumping in the other end and couldn't find the bottom, because I think we've got to be careful with that as well. So don't
yeah,
overstate your story, but don't understate it.
yeah, okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's important that people start to think about making sure that that is included, in everything that they're doing, is it's to bring that relatability piece through. So you mentioned the pandemic before. Let's just sort of jump back to that. So during the pandemic, we lived 100% online, right? So it was everything. We had to rewire our thinking on business and marketing, because it was like, how are we going to navigate all these changes and whatever. But online and offline are very different. However, the digital world is focused often, when we talk about marketing, people typically go straight to digital. Oh, we need to be online. It's websites, it's email, it's all these things. And yep, that is an important part of the world we live in. But I know myself, like, I'm starting to do more of the old school, traditional type marketing stuff. And that stuff is getting huge engagement. Like, see you later, Facebook. It doesn't even compare. So have you felt a shift from the work you're doing? Because you're on the coal front talking to these people in workplaces all the time, of people going, I'm really craving in-person conversation and in-person events, or have to be able to bring this connection back. Because I think we lost a lot of that connection during that pandemic period. So, like, have
Yep.
you felt a shift in that?
There's definitely a shift, because literally we've opened up again. So I think
Yeah.
that was always going to be the case. I'm also going to say this, is that I actually think that um, the benefit of the pandemic in regards to the social side of the social marketing, I think has been really useful as well, because I
Mhm.
think it's created a situation for organisations to not just roll it out for the sake of it, but they had to, all of a sudden we're all on the same medium. You better start to get something that's going to attract your clientele. So I
Yeah.
think there's some usefulness in that. Look, I'm seeing a huge appetite. Look, the last 2 weeks I've been involved with a couple of conferences, and you just, it's not what I think about what happened. It's how I felt when I was there. And like, as much, I think there's a mix now. This is an adaptation again. We now need to believe that both can work together, but let's not get caught up in this bullshit of like we can do everything online now. We can
Yeah.
do everything virtually now. Now, some people will say that's the way I've gone and that's what I'm going to do. For me, I used to be 100% in the room. I reckon I'll be now 50-50.
Yeah.
So I've had to change my beliefs and behaviors, but that's what the marketplace also wants now. So that in some respects, you're going to market both ways. So I can do virtual and market stuff, and I can do that through social channels, LinkedIn and whatnot,
Yeah.
but also have face-to-face catch-ups with people, and that they are craving them. Like
Yeah.
we are not built to sit on the end of something like this for hours and hours a day and not be actually physically in a room with people. But
It's
I think
different,
again,
right?
the pandemic
It's still
gives us the
different. Yeah.
opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is like, even though you can be face to face with someone, it is still different being in real life, like in
Yep.
an actual room where you can see all their body language. You can see, like it always will be. And as much as I love the digital world and it is very much a part of our life now, I think there's still so much value in those real life conversations and getting and actually being in front of people.
I think we've got to accept now that if there is a gift out of those 3 years, it's that we can do both, and both can work in unison. But we shouldn't go too far down one way or the other.
Yeah. And, of course, it's all been nice and quiet. I'm going to share some context. Mark and I have both got dogs in our offices, and I had people outside mowing, and now the garbage truck has just decided to go past.
Well, I think between us, Tanya, I think between us we've got 9 dogs, so that's pretty good.
Oh, and all sorts of stuff happening in the background. So, guys, we're rolling with it because it's all about being human and we don't care. So, if you hear some background noise, it won't last long anyway. Yeah, I think, as you're right, as you said, the world has changed. We need to sort of go with that and just, do what works for the companies that we're working with and the way that business is working these days and not get too caught up on the ins and outs of it all. I'm going to bring up, maybe it's a dirty word, Chat GPT. it's taken the world by storm, right? There's been a lot of debate about it. Everyone's talking about what it's going to do to business, and oh my god, a robot's going to take over the world, and everyone's just lost their mind over it. For me, I think it's a great starting point. It's good to put something in there, gives you a bit of a foundation. Obviously, the response you get back lacks any sort of personalization, any real person element whatsoever. What are your thoughts about not just Chat GPT, but AI when it comes to this whole human conversation?
Oh, this could be its own podcast. So, look, if I think about progress and adaptation, that this is part of progress and adaptation. So there's
Yeah.
value in it. I think it all comes back. We've got to go now back to our human quality. What's the intention of it?
Yep.
So I think if it's well intended, it's like anything. If it's well intended and it's helpful, that's fantastic. If it's not so well intended and it's harmful, that's another way. So I'll give you a quick example. Like my sister lives in LA, but she does she does some work for me, including putting my fortnightly newsletter up. And she said to me the other day, "Just send me a random topic," and I did. And then she sent me back this article, and I said, "Hey, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good article." And I said, "That's a Chat GPT article, isn't it?" She goes, "Yeah, it is." And I said, "Look, I actually think that the article reads pretty well, but I
Yeah.
go back to my value set before. Um, I'm not using Chat GPT to write my newsletters for me
Yeah.
because that fundamentally misaligns with
Yeah.
what it is to be human for me. Now, that doesn't mean that the technology is bad. It just means that I have a values alignment that says I actually need to write this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I actually think it's really useful. Here's where it becomes a bit shitty though.
Yeah.
Like it's either going to destroy humanity or it's going to be the greatest thing for humanity. And this is what everyone's jumping on the bandwagon. I did a
Yeah.
podcast about this 2 weeks ago saying we love shiny stuff. It's the latest shiny thing. If you go onto LinkedIn in the last month, every man and his dog are writing about ChatGPT and how it's going to change things and how it's going to be great or how it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
Like just sit with it for a while, humans, and don't get all caught up in the hype of it. Find out where it's going to be useful for your business and your marketing,
Yeah.
but also realize where it's going to take away from what you're about and have the courage to say no when you need to.
Yeah. Well, it comes back to having that balance, isn't it? Well, maybe I can use it in some areas and not others, or I can use it as a starting point and add to it. And I think, like, yeah, everyone's talking about it, and there's obviously a lot of debate going on around it. But I think, yeah, it definitely has its strengths.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I'm a bit the same. I'm like, I've put some stuff in there to see what it pumps out. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to use that, but it's actually given me some inspiration, some thought about how I could start that now. So, like anything, I think like trends. This sort of stuff happens all the time. Bloody, remember Pokemon, where everyone was running around chasing these bloody,
Yep.
fictional, and all it was everyone Pokemon cafes, and it's like these things happen. Let's just see where it goes. If it fizzles or if it just keeps happening.
I do wonder what the conversations were like. I know there weren't podcasts back then, but when we moved from horse-drawn carriage to cars, I
Yeah.
wonder what the conversations were. Now, I'm going to say this. My curiosity would say to me that the conversations were pretty similar. This is either going to be the best thing in the world, or it's going to destroy something. And I reckon mobile phones would be the same. Like,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love what you said before. This is just an evolution, but intention is critical here if you're looking from a human lens.
absolutely. I think that's a really good point. Is it if it's intention is if good intention is around it, then that's not necessarily a bad thing. Oh, we could probably have this conversation all day, right? Like talking about all
You
this sort
could.
of stuff. But I'm conscious of time, and you've shared so much great stuff, and I'm going to share all these things in the show notes. Now, if you resonate with what Mark has been sharing, make sure you go and check out Simply Practically Human. He's got a book out called Being Human. There's when does the academy start? Does it start
Well, the
launch?
academy's just really been softly launched. So if you went onto my website, which is www.marklebusque.com, you'd be able to find that in the shop area. There's the academy stuff. So yeah, the podcast, the newsletters. If they go in there, they can subscribe to
Put all the
things.
links.
I don't try and sell them stuff. And please, I want to say this too. Like, reach out to me on LinkedIn and just send me a connection request. Some people will be like, oh, but you're a podcaster and an author, and that, so what? I'm a human being who likes to connect and feel a sense of belonging. So, hey, I've really enjoyed the conversation. We could talk forever, but our dogs will stop us from doing that at some stage.
At some stage, you're going to be, hey, we need to go out. Thank you so much, Mark. I really value your time. And as I said, I'm a fan of what you do. I have been for quite some time. I love that you keep it real and that you are very much aligned to your values and about being human. And I just think that is bloody awesome. And that's what I certainly resonate with that as well. So thank you so much for your time. And guys, I'm going to put all the information to connect with Mark in the show notes. So please make sure you go and do that because he's a top bloke and I think you should be connected.
Thank you. There you go.
Would you like to know how your business can make sales without using social media? Then a great place to start is with my free download, aptly named Social Free Sales. In it, I share 7 ways to supercharge your sales without a single social media post. And did I mention it's free? You'll find it at saleswithoutsocials.com.au. These are just a few thought starters, and I cover much more juicy content in the Sales Without Socials program. So sign up for the waitlist if that sounds good to you. And you'll also find links in the episode show notes as well. Until next time you tune in, never let anyone dull your marketing sparkle.